Well into it. Albert Mangahas, sir, you're in Vancouver. How often do you come to Vancouver?
This is my first time. I'm
Oh,
excited.
yeah. It's your first
but
time.
my wife is actually originally from Toronto, so I always love an excuse to go to Canada. So
Oh,
I mean,
yeah?
this is a little bit further from Toronto, but Canada nonetheless. I love it.
How often do you guys make it, actually?
Oh, it's been a while. Last time we were in Toronto was pre-COVID.
Wow, a long time ago.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's been a while. So good to be back in Canada, but can't wait to go back with the family.
So she doesn't usually visit the Great White North?
Not as often as she'd like. But I think we're overdue for a trip.
Okay, there you go. Well, it's great to have you here. So I'm excited for today's conversation. I mean, we had, I think, a podcast like a year ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, right?
Something like that. Yeah. Time has flown by, but
And we only did one.
we only did one.
Oh, yeah. But it was great, and it really warranted a second one.
Yeah.
Right? But now on every level, we're kind of upgrading it. So
Can't wait.
we're also catching you at an interesting time in your career, which I'm sure we'll talk about.
Yeah.
Right? But just for the scope of this conversation, as I mentioned to you before. So a lot happened in the past 25 years in business, digital, data, AI. It's kind of been crazy, right? There are fascinating stories in there. And I just wanted to take this opportunity to just review that whole story. And I get to do it from your perspective, which is going to be a lot of fun. So that's what I would like to do today. And maybe let's just turn back the clock to The Matrix comes out in 1999. I don't know why, but this is my new anchor for some sort of turning point. 2000, right? Where are you in 2000?
2000. I am still in the middle of university at the time, and I was studying at USC, or University of Southern California, down in Los Angeles. And at that time, actually, interestingly, I started off as like a computer science major. Loved it, but my roommate at the time convinced me to pursue industrial engineering. Actually, I had no idea what it was, but this idea, the concept of trying to make things better, really resonated. And obviously, there's a lot of different applications of industrial engineering, but that led me to industrial engineering, and from there, the kind of career kind of evolved in a lot of interesting ways.
Why did you get into computer science to begin with? What was that?
I think really the impetus of this was my dad was a computer programmer at Sunkist for like 25 years straight. And I actually had no idea what that meant growing up, but always got intrigued by it. And it just felt like something where I do enjoy math, I enjoy problem solving, and felt like the right thing to do. I still enjoyed it. I actually enjoyed all the classes, but again, I think I started to evolve like, I don't know how I feel about just like being like just pure coding all the time.
Yeah.
Like, how do I think about actually improving or actually optimizing things and actually solving problems was super, super interesting. And so that led to, again, this interesting role or interesting major of industrial engineering. And then the most random part, there was just one class. There was a SQL class. And so the one SQL class, I kind of fell in love with it. It was this idea of data, and then now data and how to improve things. The intersection of that kind of was the start of my career.
I love that because everyone has their story of how did you come to data, their own little love story. And some of them are, well, I encountered SQL. And then
it was it. Yeah, it was just one SQL class. I didn't know what to expect. But some people are not as excited by it, but I was just...
What made you excited about it?
I think it allowed me to really think through breaking down the problem more. And it's like not only understanding, here's a business problem. When you start to look at the building blocks of a business, all of it kind of is grounded in the actual data. And how do you analyze it? How is it stored? And all these things that maybe people don't care about, but it is foundational to... At least for me, the way that I like to operate is just like really understanding kind of the building pieces, the building blocks, and that's data. And so that's been exciting to have that introduction to it. But then that led to kind of a career in the consulting / auditing world when my first job out of college was at Pricewaterhouse or PwC.
Yeah. And I actually don't know what you did at PwC. I want to ask you, but before we go there, so that's interesting because hearing it from that angle of at the end of the day, a business, I mean, what is a business, right? Where is the business? Is it the brick and mortar of the headquarters? Is it the people working there, but they are there only for a time? So where does this business live? What is the business? And then through a lens, it is ones and zeros.
Yeah,
That's what it is, right?
exactly.
And I love this angle because it's not just about, okay, you keep data on your cloud, so there's digital data, but a layer underneath that, there's a numerical reality of the business. So it's like not just computer science, digital tech, but on the level of mathematics, right?
That's right.
So this is very interesting to me, and also how industrial engineering was something that kind of spurred your imagination almost, because their technology can actually shape the real world.
Yeah.
Right. So we're just working on a project with Caterpillar. They're also joining the masterclass, by the way. So
Super excited.
yeah. It's one of those cool companies, right? That's what they do. But then you got to something less brick and mortar, which was consulting, PwC. How did that happen?
So while at USC, I think one of my jobs was actually working while going through university, is working at the Career Center. And so it was actually an interesting thing where I'd help organize all the companies come visiting, and I'd help organize interviews that are on campus. And it just so happened PwC was coming to interview. I kind of just did it to start practicing. I actually had no idea what they did either, or what I was going to be doing, but I went through the process as kind of a practice interview. But I kind of learned in the interview process as well as my own research, prepping for the interview. But it was a data role, and since at the time I took that SQL class, I was like, cool, this is something I actually would enjoy. But that led to an internship at PwC over the summer, and that was in San Francisco. I was in LA at the time, and so I was able to do an internship that summer of 2006. That led to a full-time offer to rejoin that team after I graduated. So it was comforting, at least having a job kind of secured for my senior year.
Yeah, that's nice.
And yeah, I started full-time in the summer of 2007.
Yeah, that's because it's kind of like the story of, oh, well, how did you join PwC? Well, I just stumbled into it.
Yeah.
It's like they basically threw the job at me. Yeah, I mean, definitely, because at that time, so what year is that when you started your?
I started with a full-time gig was in 2007. The summer.
2007. Okay, so we're going like from 2000. It's like 7 years.
Yeah.
Education and internship and all that. Yeah. How long were you at university? Like how long?
I was there for 4 years. So I started in, I guess that would be 2003.
Okay, got it. Okay, so yeah, because before that it was like a 2000. Where were you at?
That was then still in high school.
Okay, and I just want to put together
Right.
the timeline here. Okay, so at PwC, you spent how many years?
6.5.
Okay, so how did that role evolve? What did you do first? And then
so from the data side is something that I enjoyed, but it was a really interesting role because it was at the first portion of it was really focused around PwC does a lot of financial audits. They're part of the Big Four. And so the team that I joined was really focused on the data component of that. And as companies are going through their financial audits, there's probably not exciting for most, but this notion of kind of validating and going through all of the financials and the transactions, making sure it's complete and accurate. And that was effectively like a boot camp for me. It was like nonstop, over 100 companies, getting a bunch of transactional data, completeness and accuracy. But it built this foundation of kind of one of my principles around kind of this trust in data is kind of always has to come first. Like you can't do anything else. You can't move on. You can't make decisions unless it's complete and accurate. And so whether that's brainwashing or I just was programmed. But
this is so fun because I'd never discovered this thread, by the way, but my best friend from high school, we were like best friends, but we took very different routes. He was like, shout out to Balaj here. So I think he works at the UN now. And very different. He like studied all night and was like very diligent, got into the best like finance school in Hungary, right? And then he just went on to obviously the PwC career and all that. And then I was like very different. I was like the opposite. But we remained really good friends over the years. And and he was like burnt out at PwC, right? So that was always like one of those situations when we came together with the high school friends, and we're catching up. Well, Balaj is depressed because he's at PwC. What's happening at PwC? So how he explained to me what PwC does, and I'm not an audit expert, right? But was like, okay, what does it do? And he's like, well, the companies need to know that their numbers and books are in line, right? They are good and accurate and all that, so they need to prove that. So they hire a company, and then okay, and basically, who pays that company to do that audit, that check on you? Well, you pay them. So it's like, and he was like, just that concept too. I remember, obviously, the daily reality of working for PwC was, grueling, but he said that component also, with all the issues, contributed to that, right? So at PwC, though, there is this kind of very advanced focus on numerical accuracy, right? And then they're unleashing technology at that problem, right?
That's right.
So what did you learn there as skills over 6 years?
Yeah, I think it was a variety of things. And again, there's PwC has a lot of different practices, but I think the more simplistic view of it, there's kind of the financial audit or external audit component, which was exactly that, where public companies are required to go through audits. And as part of that, you have to pay usually one of the big four to go through that whole experience, and you do it every single year. And there's quarterly process, and so there's always a ton of work there. And then there's the other component, which is also they do consulting and advisory work. So they're not doing anything from an audit standpoint, but then they're helping consult on all kinds of different things.
And is it a whole different business arm for all of them? Right?
Yeah, there are. And then within that, there's all these types of specialties by industry to different technologies to, and at the time, this is where, all the financial ERPs, there's experts in SAP, Oracle, and all these other financial systems where either from an audit standpoint or from a consulting standpoint of, we just went through a merger with another company or acquired another company. How do we think about that transformation? I had an experience on kind of working on both sides of that.
Can we just spend a minute, because this is really cool on the big four, just a little bit, because you work for one of them, right? And again, the people who will listen to this, some of them are data professionals, some of them are just business leaders.
Sure.
So the big four. So we have EY, we have PwC, we have McKinsey. Right, and is it BCG?
Deloitte.
Deloitte. Yes,
yeah.
BCG is just they're also
There's a management consulting firms as well, which then there's the McKinseys of the world as well. Yeah.
So McKinsey and Deloitte, do they do audits?
McKinsey does more the management consulting and more the advisory work.
Do they offer audit at all?
I don't believe so. It was I think the big four are now it's like going back memory lane here. It was Deloitte, KPMG,
yeah. EY,
and PwC.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So McKinsey's not even there.
Yeah, I mean, there was still a big player, but not on the audit side.
Got it. Okay, interesting. And then, so what years are we talking about? Starting at PwC and then ending at
so 2007 to 2013.
Okay. So 2013. By 2013. We had the whole mobile proliferation, right? Digital revolution and all that. So how did that wave catch you at PwC? And then where did that drive your career forward?
Yeah, so I think this is where what made it really interesting is that PwC was a great foundation for everything I was doing. But again, it was just kind of parachuting into a lot of these different companies. And you'd come in to solve a very specific problem, sometimes for a week, sometimes for months. And as I was seeing kind of this transformation happening with what's happening with technology and just the world and business, that's where I really kind of forced me to start thinking about, what other opportunities should I start to lean into and actually join a company and actually build a team and be part of that. And so that led me to joining Green Dot, which at the time is an interesting business because it's a prepaid debit card business. So they sell physical prepaid cards in a retail store, but it's a financial services product that also has a mobile application. And so it was an interesting hybrid of multiple businesses all in one, of retail, finance, and technology. So it was this retail fintech kind of hybrid public company at the time. But yeah, that really spurred my desire to really how do I immerse myself in this new world that we're moving in. And yeah, it was quite a transition, but it was quite a ride from starting with a team of one and over the years building that team out to almost 20 by the time I left.
Yeah, actually. And how long did you spent there?
That was about 2.5 years.
2.5 years. Okay, and you said that it was already a public company.
Yeah, it was.
Okay,
Yeah, it still is.
I just. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
For some reason, I thought that they were smaller, but
Yeah, no, they've been a public company, and again, it's this a great product in terms of just from a financial services standpoint. Not everyone there's kind of a whole population that's underbanked, and this allowed this customer base to be able to have access to an actual debit card and something that you can easily get. Quite literally right at the grocery store.
And is this a continuous need still today? Like,
yeah, absolutely.
And what are their like at that size of business? Public company, but it's not like it's not Caterpillar.
That's right. Yeah.
Right. So at that size, first of all, what are their goals? Like, what do they have as a company vision and goal? Right? And what are their main challenges?
Yeah, I mean, it was really trying to unlock, the financial products for a large portion of the U.S. population that, again, it doesn't fit into the traditional banking system. Yeah. Whether they didn't have enough credit or they didn't know how to build credit, and this gap where, okay, well, I can get this financial product, kind of help improve that financial literacy, but also provide ways that they can then just get direct deposit right into their account, to then having a mobile banking application at the time, which was kind of still evolving back in 2013. So that was kind of the goal. And I think the other part that kind of it expanded to is then it's just how do we help some of these customers kind of continue to evolve and start improving their credit. So there's the credit building tools and all these other new features that were starting to get explored over time.
Yeah, and actually, fintech has been one of the big buzzwords of the past 25 years. And
right.
you have some of these. I mean, AI is the biggest already, right?
That's right.
But then we have big data, we have fintech, we have other stuff too, from IoT to 3D printing and all that. Yeah. Fintech is a big one, right? So with fintech at the time, right? What was the most exciting, like, basically innovation wave when you were there?
I think it was this transformation of like the mobile banking apps and this idea of like banking from your phone. It was still like in this evolutional state. I think all the banks were everyone was starting to create all their different apps. But I think this idea of making it really, really easy to do that, and not being tied to the traditional means. And a part of this was like some of the technology would be thinking about, well, I don't need to go to an ATM. Can I just go to any grocery store and be able to add money to my account or extract money from my account? And so like small little innovations like this of like, how do we get creative around expanding kind of the footprint of how people can access their money, to other interesting innovations where there was a great partnership actually with Green Dot and Uber to do instant pay. This was like kind of the notion of like when someone completes a trip, well, how long does it take for that driver to get their money? And that can be a challenge when
right. You need to shorten that time. It's not as simple. It's not as
absolutely easy. Yeah. Some of them are they were living off of this as their income and waiting for some delayed amount of time. It's not optimal. And so that was again the necessity and the evolution of what was happening. And Uber was starting to really, really grow over the years, as everyone knows. But instant pay was one of those features that Green Dot partnered with Uber.
It's more complex than people think, right? Like Kate always tells that story. She told it in Austin, and I think also in Nashville, that she was working before Expedia and before Miro, working for a small fintech company doing analytics, and their whole business vision and model was to lower the cost of transactions drastically compared to Stripe. So a small fintech company, they moved Target a few times,
right?
But I was like, this is the opportunity, we can do it. And then Kate did some investigations into the whole regulatory and many levers and many players, which made it mathematically impossible to push it down below a certain standard. And she had to like tell the company leadership, and basically break all those dreams and aspirations, but they pivoted, right? But it just shows like how important it can be that someone can actually read the numbers.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
So why did you? What came after for you, and what year are we talking about here?
So now, yeah, from Green Dot again was from 2013 to
13, okay.
about 2016, and I think a great run at Green Dot again, scaling. When I joined, it was a team of one, and actually the scope was limited. It was just focused on their biggest account, which was Walmart.
Well, okay, Walmart was the
And
biggest
so,
account.
and the product itself was the Walmart Money Card, which still exists today, where you can go get this prepaid debit card.
It was their biggest account.
The biggest account.
Wow.
But doing the great work there, where it was evolving really my role from a business intelligence, like reporting perspective, and evolving that to like actually driving insights. And that allowed me to explore and expand my role to actually centralize the team and have coverage across all the different products, across all the different retailers. And there were some tax products, and different partnerships with Uber, for example. But that was at the end of 2016 when I was looking to kind of explore other opportunities. And I think at the tail end of my time at Green Dot, I actually was working a lot more closely with our finance team and FP&A. And I was really intrigued of demystifying kind of the black box that, at least where I was at the time, and they have good intentions, but like they have their financial model, they're doing their thing, they refresh their forecasts, and they're going through the rhythms of what they need to do from a financial planning standpoint. But how do we connect the dots with that back to the rest of the business? And where does data play a role? And so I found out about Turo was hiring two different roles at the time. It was a head of FP&A role and a head of analytics role. And the head of analytics, that's kind of my traditional path. But I was like, I'm just going to apply to both and let's see what happens. And
well, someone can do both jobs, right?
Yeah. I mean,
we have Albert, but we can't decide. Should he be the head of analytics or the head of FP&A?
And that eventually, as the conversation went, they were like, well, is there one that you want to do? I was like, I'm interested in doing both. And I was like, where do you think I can provide the most value? And I just want to help. I love the idea of the business was super interesting. They're like, oh, why don't you do both? And I was like, sounds great. I did. And I actually didn't realize at the time that I actually signed up for 3 roles because
that was in the fine print.
It was a Series C company at the time, a little over 100 people. I was also, since I was head of FP&A, also playing a large part of the fundraising process for the next round of fundraising for the Series D. So it was fundraising, leading the FP&A team, as well as leading analytics. Yeah, really great experience.
So it's funny because you're gaining experience in so many areas. I didn't even know that you practically worked in the Walmart ecosystem.
Yeah.
That's huge.
Yeah.
Especially retail is like one of the front runners of analytics application.
Absolutely.
Right. And you get to be there with, Walmart, Best Buy, right? They were huge when the whole big data thing emerged. Like retailers were like flooding the news cycle with, how well they're doing in that area.
Right.
Now, so we have you joining Turo, right? In this role. So before we dive into that, because a lot of the viewers would have worked for an enterprise all their lives, work in different businesses, different roles. Can we just do a very quick view on this whole what stage the company's in, Series A, Series B, pre-seed, right?
Yeah.
Because we'll talk about business models, and we'll look at also later on, spoiler alert, Facebook, right, where you'll spend a little bit of time, which we'll talk about. But I want to look at these businesses from, okay, what do they do? How do they operate? What are their goals? What problems are they trying to solve? And then how the digital transformation and data and AI play a role in that over the years. So can you just go through that? Because you had the view on this investment world as well.
Yeah.
Right. So how does it look like, just for those who don't really follow?
And specifically for Turo here first, or
also just in general. First of all, like companies, let's look at Turo as an example of how did Turo evolve over the years.
Yeah. So Turo, again, I was fortunate to join in 2016. Again, the Series C, and for those of again, as a startup, you start with your seed round, and over time, as you scale and prove product market fit and all these things, you start to gain traction, and you kind of progress through these later stages. And I had joined relatively about a year or so after the Series C. And I guess the way that things have evolved there as a team of little over 100, it was super fascinating to me in terms of how they were thinking through not only the business, but how much they really relied on data for decision making. And it was kind of new to me thinking through it in a different lens as a startup, where working at a public company, a lot of the emphasis was really just like business intelligence at the time. It was everything was just reporting, understand what's happening, what happened with the numbers yesterday. Turo, when I joined, there was actually a huge contingency of amazing data scientists that were already thinking more predictive. How are they thinking about what's going to happen in the future? How do we think about models that are going to help us optimize the product experience? And that really, really attracted me or got me excited in terms of how to think about data being used in a lot more creative ways, but then to scale a business that at the time was a Series C and just kind of an unknown product at the time of Turo, which was peer-to-peer car sharing, which at the time was a really foreign idea. This idea.
That's what I wanted to also talk to you about, like, because it's 9 years at Turo. Again, like spoiler alert with a little bit of an intermezzo, but. What does Turo do? Because actually, most people I ask now, hey, do you know Turo? They're like, oh yeah. So it's kind of filling the public consciousness now, right? But what does Turo do? And then where were they as an organization from a business perspective? Like what was the value proposition? Who were they like trying to get buy-in from the end users to the investors, right? So what was the main idea? What was the big idea with Turo? And then what stage were they at of making it happen when you joined?
Yeah, so the idea, or Turo is the world's largest peer-to-peer car sharing marketplace. But the idea, kind of the impetus of this, and the founder, Shelby Clark, who there's an infamous story of him when he was in Cambridge in the Boston area. I think he was trying to get a car, but he couldn't, and he was just biking, and he saw all of these cars just parked on the street. He's like, wouldn't it be great if I could just like rent one of these cars? Like they're just literally sitting there doing nothing. And so this idea of peer-to-peer car sharing kind of was invented and created, and it seemed crazy at the time. I mean, this idea of home sharing is not like a new idea, and obviously folks can have been going through that, but this idea of sharing probably the second most expensive asset other than owning a home is a car, and sharing a car with a stranger, everyone thought they were crazy. And I've heard it even when I was going through the fundraising discussion with investors, like, who would do this? But the idea is that a lot of these cars are sitting underutilized. 85% of the time they're just sitting in your driveway in the parking lot. And it's a depreciating asset, unlike real estate, which in most cases, hopefully it's appreciating. But here, once you buy it and drive a car off the lot, it's already depreciated and will continue to depreciate. And so the value proposition from the host standpoint, these are consumers who are looking to share their vehicle with someone on Turo, is that you can actually transform the economics of car ownership, where you're not losing money, but you can actually make it a source of income. And a little bit different from ride sharing and all these things where you actually physically have to be in the car. Well, here it's not 100% passive, but way more passive in a way where, okay, I can share the car with someone. I'm going to make income. Otherwise, it would just be sitting here on my driveway. And that kind of really created this really unique economic opportunity with a low barrier of entry for hosts. On the guest side, really what we're competing with was big rental, traditional car rental. And I can speak from my own experience, but probably for others, it's many people who rent a car, there's a necessity for it. But no one goes out of that experience thinking, oh, I had the best experience of my life. Let me tell you about my time with this car rental company.
I do have one. I just add that I do have one.
Yeah.
Right, which is... maybe I'm just going to plug it in here. So I was flying to Rhode Island for a baptism, and I flew through New York. Right. And I, in advance, was like very prudent about the car rental. I was like, okay, it's just a car. Right. Just like, I didn't even know it was probably some, SUV. Let's just stay prudent. I remember like being very mindful of that. But then as I was getting in the car, the guy was walking me, Enterprise, by the way, they're not sponsoring this show. The guy was walking me to my car, and he says, oh yeah, so we can give you this and that. And I'm like, I was joking that oh, it's the Challenger, you said.
Yeah.
Right? And then he looks at me and he says, you want the Challenger? I'm like, is it even possible? And then he's like, I can give you the Challenger. So I was like, okay, cool. Yeah. So this drive to Rhode Island just became way more fun, right?
That's amazing.
So that was a good experience.
That is, but that's not every experience.
Exactly.
But I think the thing to highlight there is that you go and book with a big rental, traditional car rental company. You actually don't know what you're going to get.
Yeah,
You're booking a category. Sometimes you're lucky and you get an awesome upgrade or something unique. Most cases, it's like. You really like sometimes you just need a car, but you get this massive moving truck, and it's like that's not helpful at all.
Yeah.
And so from a guest standpoint, for folks that are looking to rent on Turo, this is where you actually are getting the exact car that you want to get, and it's that color, that trim, that style, and it's an extraordinary selection. There's over 1,500 mix and models, and so many different use cases. Of like, if I just need a simple car, great. If I want to have something a little bit more luxurious, that's also great. I've got 4 kids. If I want to jam everyone into a car, I always go with a minivan. And so the options, I think, are the part, and the selection part is the part that really you can't compete with anything else.
And you and I, it's funny that you and I talked about this also when we recorded the previous podcast, and probably just during casual conversation, that this is the flip side of my story with the Challenger, right? At the same time, I'm planning my European trip. Last year, I told you, because you were also going on a European trip, right?
That's right.
So, okay, I have it all planned out. We're going to land in Switzerland. We're going to drive down to like the Swiss Alps. I'm going to get this Mercedes. And then we're going to fly over to Austria. And I'm going to get the Cupra Fermentor, which is like a Spanish kind of. So I have all this planned out. And it's all good. But then we get to Austria after I had the Mercedes, which was nice. By the way, I'm not really super into cars, but when we travel, I think it's part of the experience. It's kind of like what kind of accommodation you book. It's not just roof over your head, but it's part of the whole whole journey. So I'm mindful about that. And I wanted the Cupra Formentor, but then they did not have it in Austria. So there was a little bit of scrambling, and then they actually gave me an Alfa Romeo Tonale, which is a very nice car, but I had to pay a little extra. Right. Yeah. And that moment, it's like, this is like it sounds like I'm complaining about something that's like insanely luxurious. I did not at all. We loved it. Right. But I told you that it would be actually really cool to know that I'm getting exactly what I want. And then that's when Paul also, remember, he took that trip to Toronto from Vancouver. Like he literally drove over and he took a Mustang. And then that's exactly what he wanted.
That's amazing. Yeah, and so that's where, again, the selection is, and getting exactly what you want, to then the convenience is that there's also the traditional experience. You wait in a extremely long queue or line at an airport. Hopefully you get there in time. You have to take another shuttle. But here with Turo, like, these are hosts that own the car. They can actually deliver the car to you. And so whether they want to meet you at the hotel, or in some airports where it's depending on the permit regulations, they can actually deliver the car right at the curb. So take your family, go just right off the plane, step onto the curb, throw your bags in, and off you go. It is such a magical experience where you're not stressed, like waiting in line. Am I going to get the car? Is someone going to upsell me on insurance that I don't understand?
You're not looking forward to the process, for sure.
It's not an enjoyable experience. But here, then it transforms it. It like completely flips it on its head.
Yeah.
Where its experience is kind of what we are obsessed about in terms of making sure everyone has that 5-star experience.
And this is awesome because you're also I don't know if you are still, but you're also like I know that you were at least like a Turo host.
Yeah, I still am.
So, okay, there you go. And so must be a fascinating playground for someone like you being at Turo at that time when they are trying to innovate user experience.
Absolutely.
and user experience, but also just in general, like the whole business model. I think it's very interesting that you have 2 customers.
Yes.
Right. You have the people who host the cars, one type of customer, and then you have the end users who will rent the cars.
That's right.
Right. So that must have been fascinating. How did that go? Like, what kind of innovations have you guys? Of course, whatever you can share, of how much you can show under the hood.
I think this is what my first introduction, and that's what a marketplace is, where you have 2 sides of their supply and demand, and there's so much that goes into it. And I've only appreciated it over the years and now have fell in love with marketplaces as a result is that it's just so dynamic. It's not you're just selling a physical product. And here you do in fact have two customers, and how do you balance both, and how do you think about being thoughtful of growing one side of the marketplace, but not too fast for the other side, but then kind of the network effects around both. And so that's really evolved in a lot of different innovations over the years in terms of how we're thinking about even just measurement. How do we think about these, what seems like simple problems, but even just understanding the business is extraordinarily complex. And it's very localized in terms of, well, what's happening in Vancouver is different from what's happening in Miami or Denver or in Melbourne. It's all very unique to the demand, the seasonality, the types of cars, the types of guests, where they're coming from. And so it kind of really forced, from a data standpoint, for us to really think through not only novel and creative ways of understanding the business, but then focusing on all the different things that we need to do to make the experience better. For how do we make it kind of the end goal or vision is like really for every guest, we want it to be push button, get car. We want it to be that simple. And it's there's no additional paperwork. There's no upselling afterwards. I got exactly the car that I want.
I don't want a lot of letters on the screen.
That's right.
Yeah.
And so, and that's always been the vision of trying to make sure that has been as easy as possible, but also then when they're on the trip, that the experience is a 5-star experience every single time. And then on the host side, we want them to effectively push button, make money. And this is what it's really evolved. The different capabilities of the idea at the time is that, someone owns a car part-time, they'll just start to share it. But that's evolved from someone owning one car to then folks owning 5, 10, 15, 100 to upwards of 1,000 cars on the platform. And it's like a full-time entrepreneurial business that are doing it professionally. But that requires us to think about the product and experience differently. That's a lot of cars to manage. They're managing their business. How do we make sure we help these hosts understand their business? Do they have the right data? And so thinking about it from another lens of these are all thousands and thousands of entrepreneurs, and we want to empower them, but they also need data. They also need information. So a lot of interesting innovations there as well in terms of some of the things we've had to build.
And so when people ask me, let's say 2 years ago or a year ago, what is Turo, right? If I said and they did not know, right? The quickest way that I used to describe it, right, as an outsider, is that, well, the Airbnb of car rental. And everyone's like, okay, I get it.
Yes.
They immediately get it, right?
That's right.
First of all, would you say that that's an accurate description, at least on some level?
Yeah, that would be the accurate description. I know at some point, I think we always strive that people can say Airbnb is the Turo of cars. But obviously, they're much larger and much known. But I mean, they pioneered this idea of sharing. Like, it's someone physically owns this. It's not a hotel. It's not a corporation per se. You're sharing something deeply personal with somebody, but it also brings a really unique experience. And so I think that's where kind of the synergies between the two.
And that's interesting that I'm not saying that the Uber of car rentals.
That's right.
Right? Because actually Uber, it might have been predicated on the idea that, you go from A to B so someone can hop in.
That's right.
But that actually disappeared completely from their business model and became an alternative to a taxi.
That's right.
And just now they're trying to actually reintroduce the car sharing with like the set routes.
That's right.
Right? But there it doesn't really work. But with homes, right, people were also like, oh, really? Like, I'm just going to let someone in my home?
Yeah.
So I remember when the selling point for Airbnb was that it's much cheaper than a hotel.
That's right.
And that actually also disappeared, right? And it became experiential. No, sometimes when you go, you want the experience of an Airbnb. So let's say when we went to Switzerland and Austria, I was like, no, I want a house in the mountains.
That's right.
Right? I don't want a hotel. And later on, I do in Austria, specifically because I want that specific type of hotel, but because that's the experience that I'm trying to facilitate there. So there was this conceptual shift. And then I remember that with Airbnb, their main bottleneck was trust, right? And this is a great theme here with your career too. Also the projects that we've been working on together so far, very much focused on trust.
Yeah.
On so many levels, right? And then basically with Airbnb, the whole user journey, you can analyze how each part of that experience reassures and the user and kind of reestablishes just trust at every single point, with the language.
That's right.
Right. So because they pioneered that and they proved that that model actually works, right, that empowered other industries as well. How much did you guys look at Airbnb as a concrete example to anticipate at different stages of your growth what kind of main challenges you will have and how you overcome them? Because, for example, Airbnb had a very specific answer to this lack of trust.
Yeah. Yeah, there was a lot of inspiration, but there's also some the similarities and differences of it. And I think this idea of scaling and trust in any marketplace is something that as you scale, it's something that you need to lean into more and make sure that everyone is feeling safe on both sides of the marketplace. And the special or unique and fun part of doing this from a car or an automotive standpoint is that there is this really complicated aspect of what happens if the car gets in an accident. And obviously there's the trust and the safety side from the guest standpoint, but also, well, this is a financial asset that the host earns and they rely on this for income and all the complexities that insurance deals with. That were really, I think most of our energy was really focused around how do we think about the cost of insurance side is probably the most complicated aspect of the Turo business is sharing items with one each other. If you're or selling a marketplace like an eBay or all these things are straightforward in the concept of you're just buying a product. Sure, there's some bad products and you may have to return it, but here there is people's safety, physical safety is actually at risk, or is also like the actual asset itself, and it's something where we think deeply about is in terms of how do we really make that experience as safe as possible on both sides. And it required, I think this is the part where we had to then rely on a lot of the data to do this. I mean, there was no way around it on how to think about managing risk. How do we think about minimizing that cost and making the experience good? And that kind of pushed us to evolve a lot of different innovations of us doing some of our risk modeling. How do we think about pricing relative to risk? How do we even just make sure we're doing different things to prevent bad experience from happening to begin with, like predicting. We have different fraud models and different risk models, and incredible that what the team has been able to build, and being a part of that has been really, really quite an adventure.
And it's funny how you mentioned that story with the founder looking at the cars, like they should be just rented out.
Yeah.
He probably did not anticipate immediately that, but overcoming insurance hurdles will be a big barrier. Like this is just something that you just find out about
absolutely
later on. So it's the dynamic nature of what are the key problems that you need to solve, and how do you identify the key problems even? How do you become aware of the right problems, and then how do you solve those problems as fast as possible? So basically, a company like Turo, their race to an IPO is about that, right? And demonstrating the ability that they can actually navigate a dynamic space.
That's correct. Right. And I think the part of the challenge here, it was kind of a nuance where we knew insurance was always going to be something we had to solve. But also when you're earlier stage, when it comes to analyzing the stuff and risk, and when someone gets in an accident, there's actually not a lot of data, because we were kind of subscale, and there's kind of the problem was like, well, we don't have enough claim volume to analyze and to be able to predict this. So we had to come up with other creative ways to be able to manage that. But as we've grown and scaled, we've been able to really increase the sophistication of how we're thinking about managing risk. And really, I think what part of the interesting part of when I rejoined Turo in 2019, there was obviously this global pandemic, and it transformed how everyone was thinking about profitability. And in that year, this is where I think in a matter of months, through a lot of the efforts of the data team, we kind of transformed the economics and how we approached and leveraged a lot of this data to change the way we think about risk and managing risk. And actually, in the span of 2 quarters, we were able to actually move the company from being unprofitable to profitable through a lot of, again, it was a required necessity in the world that we were in 2020, but also really leveraging the data that we had.
So I want to talk about before we get into the pandemic, because I'm sure there will be a lot to talk about around that time too. But before your, equivalent of the Michael Jordan baseball break, right? And I'm not suggesting that you didn't do a great job at Facebook, because actually, few know that Michael Jordan didn't do that bad at all in the
Sure.
leagues. In fact, it was amazingly impressive. But just to dial it back a little bit, so we're talking about 2016. If we look at the world at large,
Yeah.
right, there are so many things happening, right, and the state of data and analytics and its place in the public consciousness, and how people think about AI and data science and all that. There were some of these big moments, and you probably remember. I mean, of course you do, because we just talked about that too. The Cambridge Analytica. I think it was, what you call it, a scandal, or it
Yeah,
was basically, it was in the news cycle. People kind of remembered.
Yeah.
And that's when actually now data really entered into all layers of life, including, for example, politics, right?
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
deployed in all areas because of its real efficacy.
Yeah.
Its real power. So with Turo, like, how long was your first stint with Turo?
It was 2 years.
Okay, just 2 years.
Yeah, 2 years, and it was an intense 2 years, as again doing the three different roles, and I think the timing within that 2 years, we were able to just wrap up and secure our Series D. We raised a little over 100 million, which is exciting. But that kind of coincided timing wise exactly when Cambridge Analytica happened, and all this stuff about data privacy and how to think about this in the context of all these different apps was the buzz and what everyone was talking about. And coincidentally, that's when Facebook, well, now Meta, Facebook tapped me on the shoulder like, hey, would you want to lead a team trying to measure how much bad stuff is on the platform? And I was like, that sounds crazy. Like, who would sign up for trying to measure the immeasurable? Or how do you even think about this? But it was so unique.
It's a compelling problem to solve.
Yeah, and I think I'm attracted to these interesting, compelling problems that I ultimately decided that I couldn't pass up on that opportunity. And
they found you just because they were looking for someone who could do the job, and they found you, hey, there's this guy at this car sharing startup that's doing good.
I think the unique part, and I think this is what's just so organic about my journey, is not only being deep to the data side of it, but having the FP&A and the fundraising aspect. It required me to actually really develop my storytelling skills, from how do I talk about the business, how do I talk about the data in a really nuanced way, but not only for like an external audience, but internal. And that experience, I think, really was super applicable to this data transparency role at Facebook, because that was exactly what they're trying to do, is how do we measure all of this stuff, all the bad stuff that's happening all across the family of apps, and how do we talk about it internally, but how do we also talk about it externally, so that there's
a heavy conversation.
It is a heavy conversation.
Yeah,
and it's also extremely complex. And again, just this goes back to just another theme of trying to create clarity out of complexity. That was something I've over time and a lot of practice, something that I really got excited about. This idea, how do I explain something that is deeply, deeply technical, deeply nuanced in a way that others can understand and have a productive conversation about it, and whether that informs how the policy around all of this stuff at Facebook works, to just understanding opportunities of how do we improve the process of which we're taking a lot of this content down as quickly as possible.
So and how to quantify the unquantifiable.
Yeah.
Right. And okay, during your time there, you spent how
18 months.
Okay, 18 months. So what were your key lessons during that 18 months?
There were quite a few. I mean, one of the things I will say that the talent and the intellectual ability of the folks at Facebook and Meta, it was just incredible. And it was something that was super inspiring to kind of work amongst such a talented team across the board, across all functions. But I think what I learned out of it really was this in my role outside of just data, it was really around how do you think about at that scale. A lot of it is how do I think about influencing decisions? How do I take a leadership role and be able to transform the narrative around some of the opportunities, and doing that in a succinct way, and being able to kind of lead a whole organization. And that's where I was able to do kind of an opportunity to that with the data transparency efforts, but I also shifted over to the complete other side of focusing on all the good stuff, on the social impact and social good products, where it was not measuring all the bad stuff, but how do we amplify good with products like charitable giving, to a blood donation product that was more international, to a mentorship product. And so this idea of, sure, there's the data component, but then working and partnering with different teams is something where I really appreciated that, to make things work. It's not just a matter of just having a good data and being able to tell that story, but really influencing the decisions and working with others to then make that a reality. And that's kind of where that kind of last mile problem is, where you can have all this great analysis, but if you can't tell that story, or if you can't partner or influence the decisions, then nothing's going to happen.
Exactly.
And so that was really, really, like, probably one of the greatest takeaways from my time at Facebook was that ability to learn how to influence and be a leader, and be able to partner and kind of move the organization in, as quickly and as impactful as possible.
And this is like basically Facebook at the height of its powers. It's not like it's weak today, right? But at that time, it's like top 3 companies in the world, top sexiest companies, with probably Netflix.
That's right.
Facebook, Amazon.
Yeah, like this is the FANG, Facebook, Amazon, Netflix, Google.
The pre-meta phase. So at that time, what was Facebook's business model? Because I know that it was spreading like crazy at that time, right? Like geographically, globally.
Yeah.
Right? But what was the underlying business model of how they covered costs, and how were they trying to generate profit? And I imagine that you were not, like, you just focused on that lane of... Okay. Were you interested in going into other areas at Facebook?
Yeah, I mean, Facebook, massive organization already at the time, in 2016, 2018. I don't recall the exact size, but it was...
It was also before downsizing later on.
That's correct.
Yeah.
So they were continuing to grow extremely rapidly. I don't remember the exact stat, but it's like the percentage of newer folks is like just incredible. Just the pace that they continue to hire was just like, it never slowed down. But again, the core business model ended up being all the ads. And there was a whole amazing, brilliant team thinking about the monetization aspect, and how folks were starting to then use Facebook and Instagram also at the time on trying to drive a lot of the advertising, and using this as a new platform outside of, at the time, just doing regular placements on a website, to now all these people are spending so much time on these social media apps, and being able to monetize on that. I didn't personally get to work with this team. It was interesting to kind of be around some of the folks that were, but I think this is where it's so big that they have to divide and conquer in terms of the all the different teams focused on so many different products that they're developing, from their newsfeed to all the other innovations of what they're doing with Instagram. At the time, there's also WhatsApp had already been acquired, and so there was just a lot going on. But I was just focused on a component around community integrity, which was really, really great mission to then social good and social impact. But that's kind of what pushed me to really realize I missed kind of the broader scope.
Yeah.
How do I influence all these different areas? And there was no way of doing that at a company at the scale of Facebook, or now Meta. And so that kind of ultimately resulted in me joining Turo again, and back in end of 2019.
Yeah. And I can also imagine that these companies are very competitive also internally. And I just imagine, maybe they are not, but I imagine that there's some natural, like, territorial sense of, we know our stuff here in performance marketing.
Yeah.
And as you talk about this now, it's interesting to me that, Turo is a marketplace. Basically, it identifies sellers and buyers, and facilitates the transaction between them. And that's how Turo makes its money too.
That's right.
Right.
Yep.
They essentially, I know probably I'm butchering it, but basically they take a cut from that transaction.
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's kind of I think it unlike most marketplaces are usually monetizing on one side. Here, because of the way that we manage insurance, but effectively on the guests, as you book your car, there's a price, and then there's also a trip fee on top of that. That kind of
got it.
Where we are able to collect 100% of that as revenue.
Okay.
And then on the host side, they have their price, and then they can choose different protection plans.
Interesting.
so that if in case an accident happens, they can take on more risk themselves, which means they take a bigger cut, 90%, for example, and Turo will only keep 10%. Or if they want to be risk averse, they can take a smaller cut, let's say 75%. But Turo will be able to help financially, depending on what if an incident were to happen during the trip.
So Turo also functions a little bit like an insurance company, but they also facilitate business between the seller and the insurance company.
That's right. Yeah, I wouldn't say we are an insurance company, but we have an insurance partner that we work
Partner.
with.
Okay, so you facilitate the business.
That's right.
Okay, because Turo is good at facilitating business between parties. So why wouldn't you just facilitate business between? Okay, so this is great. I'm also now thinking that. Okay, this is a marketplace. Even Facebook, on a business level of how they make money, they're also a marketplace in a sense that they identify sellers and buyers. That's what ads do, right? So as a business, they might actually offer an experience like social networking, right? But they don't make money from that. I mean, no one is taking money from you to sign up to Facebook. You know, they don't have a monthly fee. And then would you say that the OG marketplace, because we're going to talk about also, you know, you are working for a marketplace today too. Yeah. Would you say that the OG marketplace is eBay?
Absolutely.
Is that the big?
That is the big one.
Case study.
And that's the one where there's a lot of inspiration. Actually, a lot of our leaders are ex-eBay as well.
Okay.
And so they drew a lot of that experience and this passion for thinking about both sides of the marketplace. Really drew at it. I'd say that was kind of the point of reference of learning from what those experiences were at eBay, and they definitely were the OG.
Yeah. And it's interesting because in the beginning, people were skeptical about eBay on the level of, well, you're just going to send the thing and you trust that they will send the money.
Absolutely.
It's not going to happen. And it did.
Yeah.
So we found out actually something about ourselves that we had the wrong assumption.
Yeah.
You know, we kind of, underestimated ourselves in that sense, which then opened the door to, oh, wait a second. This works. You can just do that. And okay, will it happen 100% of no? Yeah, of course, but that's fine. We can mitigate that. The core idea works.
Yeah, and I that's this whole idea of sharing or this marketplace. I mean, outside of the technology world, this has existed for thousands of years.
Yeah, right.
But creating the technology aspect of it and creating a way to be able to do that and interact with people around the world and do it easily, building that trust, and again, having that selection, having all this experience to be able to do it. At the time, predominantly on desktop, and then eventually moving to mobile. It's quite exciting, kind of to have seen that, and then kind of transplant this idea of a marketplace into a different use case of this car sharing. Has been again a wild ride of the past 9 years.
The Facebook saga, 18 months. Why did it end?
Yeah, it ultimately was this recognition that I really enjoyed the mission and everything I was doing, but I missed the broader impact of being a part of a team that really is scaling the business. I missed working on the marketing side, the finance side, the product side, and all aspects of it. And I naturally just ended up just resparking some conversation with the folks at Turo. And the timing just worked out. In terms of just them also just looking to have someone fully focused on the data side and analytics. So I wasn't doing 2 jobs or 3 jobs. It was just fully focused on analytics, which was exciting and what I wanted to do. And so,
what you love the most. Yep, so they were like, exactly. Yeah, we need Albert, and now we're going to get even more of him, even for better return, because it's something that he loves.
Absolutely right. And so that was November of 2019. So made the decision. In hindsight, again, joining a travel-centric peer-to-peer car sharing company right before a global pandemic, probably not the best decision.
Yeah. Well, I want to hear about it. So, how was business for Turo for the 18 months that you were away?
Business was good. I think one of the challenges, as I got up to speed was, and like any marketplace, it's like a pendulum swinging from demand to supply. Mm-hmm. And one of the challenges at the time then was supply was a challenge. Just needing to get more and scaling more supply. And so there was a lot of emphasis there. But the business was doing well, was continuing to grow rapidly. But all that changed in March of 2020, where like the world stopped. Like flights stopped, no one traveled, international travel completely almost shut down, and there's a lot of uncertainty. And it was it almost like it didn't feel, it felt surreal, like just looking at some
Even
of the
now
metrics.
looking back, it's surreal.
Yeah, it just like the like not only what everyone experienced, but on the data side, you literally see everything fall off on the off a cliff. And so it was fascinating to be able to be a part of that. It was, I mean, everyone was going through their journey during COVID and the pandemic, but from a data standpoint, it was quite the journey.
It was like a flat line on the EKG.
It really was. And it was like things were going up and up and up, and it was just like quite literally just immediate crash. And so then it was just the next couple of months of just trying to navigate. There were still interesting use cases where there were still folks that in healthcare, they still had to get to work, and some of them actually relied on Turo to do that. And
Wow.
so saw these amazing stories of just how Turo was still something where folks were able to use in different types of use case, not necessarily leisure travel, which pretty much disappeared at the time. But then it also forced us, like many companies, to then focus on profitability. With top line not growing where we would want to, and we couldn't control that. We had to then think about how do we cut costs and rethink that. And that was kind of the main focus of not only the data team at the time when I joined, but also kind of the whole company is really rethinking of how do we cut costs.
Like wartime.
It was wartime. It was trying to really navigate that. And so it was quite an experience where 2020 was like a focus on profitability. And we started to see some of the bounce back. It was interesting to kind of see where one of the markets that opened up first was in Florida, where people can go. And so everyone was excited to go there. This is in 2021, where spring break there was massive because it was one of the few markets that have just opened up. So everyone's like, oh, we're all going to Florida. But then we also noticed in March of 2021, this is when effectively it was like almost an anniversary of shelter in place protocols, where everyone was like, I need to get out of the house.
Yeah. I remember.
Like I need to go somewhere. And that's when travel really started to pick up, but it picked up in a way where people needed cars. But in 2020, traditional car rental, they require, their business model requires that they're operating at a high utilization, meaning that their cars are booked 80, 90% of the time. But when demand completely was eviscerated, they had to actually sell off their fleet. So many of them actually downsized their fleets. This is Hertz, Avis, Enterprise, all the traditional car rental, because they weren't getting booked. It financially doesn't make sense for them. But when the demand came in 2021, they didn't have the cars.
Wow, this is...
and it was an interesting time where even getting cars, like they were trying to work with manufacturers, but then, well, manufacturers, people also wanted to buy cars. Well, they can... Why sell it at a discount?
I mean,
wholesale.
You had to. I remember, put down your name 2 years in advance for a Toyota.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So it's like
it was insane. And
talk about supply and demand, right?
Yeah, and there's the supply chain issues with producing the cars and all these things that was happening because of COVID. And so then it was like people wanted to travel, but how do they get cars? And this is what really helped, like up level or step function change, kind of getting Turo closer to a household name.
You were well positioned in that.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because I also just, before we dive in, so with Turo, when you rejoined them, that was 2019, what month?
November.
Whoa. So how did you process personally that, wow, I moved from Facebook to Turo, and now this is happening, flatline, basically, the whole data pipeline, right?
I was... panic was probably putting it lightly, but it was, I mean, there's no way anyone could have predicted it. Like, you heard rumblings of this already in early 2020, but not really sure what was happening.
It happened fast.
And once it happened, it was just like everything was kind of just trying to react. And so there was some panic induced, but then I think it was then the focus on like, what do we need to do to kind of manage the business, manage the team, navigate this new world that we're living in, managing a whole workforce remotely. There's crazy. All these like things like, even though I was panicked, like I almost didn't have time to think about it. Like we then had to just go into what do we need to do to keep things moving. And that was, as scary as it was, I mean, everyone was kind of going through it. It was quite an experience.
Yeah, I can imagine. It's interesting that I'm just reflecting on that because that was 2020 and we sold the previous business data leaders in London 2020 January. right? So I was in the process of selling it, and then I remember that some of our main offerings were in-person events, right? So
Yeah.
actually that product, like I developed that product. I was like heading the team that was developing that product specifically, which were these roundtables across Europe for data analytics and AI leaders from big companies. Similar to what we do, but it was more like, 1 days in London, Amsterdam, Copenhagen, Zurich, right? And we handed over the business, and the ink dried on the paper, and the next day is like, okay, travel is shut down. And the company thought that, well, okay, we'll need to move the March event to June. It's like, okay, well, it will be probably a little bit more of a skip.
That's right.
And I had my whole plan of, okay, let's sell the company in January, and this is what I'm going to do for a year.
Right.
And then, no, that's a pandemic. So, but it kind of worked out well because I wanted to do consulting. It was an interesting time to do like small business consulting during that time. Right. So in this second stint, then it's funny that this whole situation turns from a big liability into an opportunity.
Yeah.
Right. For you guys of, okay, now we're best positioned to actually provide people who have a need for a car.
Yeah.
Right. We can move faster than the car rental company, where their business model is about actually maintaining fleets.
Absolutely.
Which they downsized. Okay, so is it safe to say that you moved into like a different type of offensive mode? Offensive meaning that you are now on the attack to like actually develop solutions for the company to aggressively drive that growth.
Yeah, 100%. It went from, now that we had this great backbone of addressing and focusing on profitability in 2020, gave us this comfort that, okay, now we don't have to worry about fundraising. We kind of are in control.
You established that position in the marketplace.
Exactly.
The market believes in you. Yeah.
That's right. And now that we needed to grow supply, this is the part that we saw kind of the fundamentals of our marketplace really shine through, because then it was something where naturally folks like in Hawaii, where you couldn't get any cars, like travelers were booking U-Hauls because they just needed a car. Our community rallied in terms of the host community, and they were starting to then just get cars from their family, their neighbors, and everyone. And the scalability of being able to ramp up the supply, we were able to then really focus on how do we operationalize that playbook of like, how do we scale supply? And then that created another challenge in 2021 when we had all this supply and demand was kind of evolving in this post-COVID world where people weren't just doing this revenge travel, in 2021 to 2022. And so then it focused, again, a lot of the efforts on the demand side. And it pushed us to really continue to attack kind of the problems kind of one at a time, but really using data as much as possible along the way.
So it's also interesting to me because there is this talk today about how AI will replace this and that, and now we will have AIs building companies and selling companies, and okay, which are, look, no one knows what's going to happen, right? But we have our opinions,
Sure.
And then we're trying to assess what's actually happening. I'm sure that also later on today we'll talk about some of that of the AI conceptions, but with basically growing a company, making a company successful, that's about navigating that story, that very dynamic space of what's happening out there in the world, in business, right? When you think about creative production, AI is the same that it can really facilitate creating something that is beautiful to watch and it's engaging to experience, but we don't necessarily know the exact recipe of that success. So when people say that, oh, now AI will direct movies and put together movies and release movies, again, we don't know what's going to happen, but we can be skeptical. So that human element during that whole phase, do you think that will be replaced in the future as AI progresses? Right? Like what is your view on that? And we can transition into that kind of AI conversation too, but maybe first on a philosophical level almost.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, there's so many different opinions on this, and I'll happy to share mine, but I kind of see it as like maybe the parallel, since I was living in the car space at Turo, is like this vision of L5 autonomy. Everyone's like, oh, everything's going to be self-driving and all that, and at some point, maybe we'll get there. Who knows exactly when we'll get there? But same thing with AI, where AI is going to take over everything and do all this decisioning. In reality, I think the way I think it was like there's really kind of this hybrid approach of how things are going to happen, especially in the creative side, where there will still need to be an element of the kind of gut checking or ground truthing back to not fully relying on things, but still having trust. And I think this goes back to kind of, again, my foundation of everything coming back to trust. Like, how do you have trust in what's coming out of the engine? And I think this is where, depending on the use case, and there's so many different use cases for AI, which makes it so exciting. How do you think about trust in that aspect, and not just taking whatever it's giving you as truth, or the idea and the risk of hallucinations that is still very real and will continue to be real. And so I think the why I get excited is that as more and more use cases and the rate that AI is kind of evolving, there's this interesting things where you can start to see all these opportunities and these ideas of how to kind of merge the two worlds of the way that we used to work and this idealistic way that we could be working. And I find it exciting and beautiful, scary, but opportunistic. And so this is where the curiosity side on my side, like I'm excited to kind of explore this further on the data side, but I think there's so much to do with leveraging AI in a way where it's ingrained in how we operate. It's not replacing it. And I think that's my philosophy is like, to get the best of both worlds, it needs to work together, but it should make your life easier. So it's not like those things that maybe have done that manual process, like, yeah, let's automate. But there's the part where there's still a little bit of creative element that right now, I don't see a world where we can trust that's coming out of some of these systems yet, but then you can harmonize the best of two worlds, where you have the time to be creative, but you can kind of reason with these models in a lot of exciting ways. And I'm now ingrained where I use it on a regular basis now. And so
I'm really glad that I asked this question, because this is the perfect way to kind of finish this session too. So we are actually, and challenge me on this, right? But we're actually terrible at predicting if something will be replaced.
Yeah.
Right? So let's say this self-driving car example, I think it's perfect, because I do remember in 2014, right? I remember being on 2014 LinkedIn when I started my professional career in business analytics. A lot of time on LinkedIn. It's a very different LinkedIn from what it is today. Right. And it was a fact that self-driving cars are replacing all trucks within 2 years. Right. It was a fact.
Yeah.
Right. It was pretty much in the bag. It was just about how we're going to manage that transition.
That's right.
Didn't happen at all.
No.
Right? It's like 10 years and we don't have we don't have a significantly higher number of autonomous trucks on the highways.
That's right.
Right? And we were terrible at predicting that. I see that even with AI, almost like the same is happening. So, and it's obvious on many levels. Let's just talk about growing a company and selling a company. Now we have, AI can now build companies and sell companies. Ask any investor when they buy into a company, what are they buying? It's a very easy thing to look at what they're buying, because they are not hiding this fact that, sure, you need a good core idea, right? Sure, you need a good narrative around an opportunity, for sure. But what do they buy mostly? It's the people, is the founders, like their experience and all that. So the same reason why most trains, which are basically tied to a track, are still driven by humans, even though it's like a closed, simple system, right? That is not a technological barrier there. But there's something that we still want a person, due to all their faults and unpredictability of a person, is like way higher than the machine, but we still don't really trust the machine. And also I remember in 2014 too, they were like, now with the chatbots, this was like pre-Gen AI chatbots, right? With the advent of these chatbots, the sales professions will be wiped out in like 3 years.
Right.
I'm like, you have no idea about sales.
Yeah.
Right? Sales is not about like providing the right information, right? It's a whole different game. It's like you need the human entities in the work, and we still don't understand this. Yeah. Right. So, and I think a lot of people see it as this is a contradiction to either you're an AI optimist, right, or you're an AI pessimist because you don't believe it. No, I think it's like being an AI realist.
Yeah.
Right.
That's
And for that you kind of at least need some level of understanding of the underlying technology. So maybe I would love to get your take on this. Right. that today when business leaders are investing into AI and they're incorporating it into their business strategy and they're going all in on that,
Right.
what do you see as the greatest like hidden opportunities and maybe the hidden blockers
Yeah.
that might result in market corrections? And
I think the opportunities, the starting point here is just it's getting the entire company and everyone comfortable with it. I think this is where AI is it's a big concept. It can mean different things if you ask any single person in the company, but getting comfortable with how to just using it from small task, whether it is just like a chat GPT or a Gemini or whatever it is, to then evolving, that will open up the dialogue in terms of identifying the use cases. And I think that's where I again, I feel it's challenging right now where everyone is trying to think about all of these shortcuts, because everyone loves to hear the buzzword. Oh, we implemented this solution, this AI solution, and we cut our cost by 50%. And it's like, sure, that may have been true. There may be some caveats to that, but I don't think there's, it's like all those other gimmicks, nothing's that easy all the time. But you can be really thoughtful on how you're approaching it. And this is where, as long as folks are starting to build that strategy around, again, starting with small use cases, but then really evolving to kind of how does that mean in terms of the org structure? How does it think about, like, how do we think about data? And that's the part where I get obsessed about, is that it still requires a lot of a weird, interesting, personalized, stylistic kind of analytical approach on how you are solving problems. And how can you trust an output that's just coming? Is it automatically going to give you an output? And again, that's the area where I'm looking to explore more of this idea, where I don't think it's the right concept of, here I'm just going to pass a bunch of raw data to an LLM and expect it to give me all the answers that I've been looking for. There's a lot more thought that needs to go into it. And I think this is where this trust in data is a good foundation, because if you're going to start relying on some of these outputs, you need to understand what you're feeding into it, being able to assess the accuracy and completeness of what you're getting back, and then kind of building on top of that with more and more solutions. So, yeah.
So it's great, because here I would love to ask you a question about AGI. So now we kind of walk through your career, and it's kind of an exciting spot where you arrived today too, right? But I want to ask you, because recently I had a great conversation with the head of credit infrastructure from PayPal, who's also data and AI VP, Nurtakin Savas. It's a shout out to him. And we did talk about that whole topic of AGI. We touched on it. It's something that's interesting to me, right? That in the 80s, when we were talking about AI, we meant a whole different thing to what we mean by AI today, right? Because we did not know that the gateway into something that resembles the kind of AI that we thought about will be Gen AI and LLMs, right? Yeah. So what is your take on AGI? Do you think about that question, maybe in the shower, maybe, on your walks or in the gym, when you're like, okay, with AGI, how will that look like? Will we ever reach that point, right? What role will LLMs play in AGI? Do you ever think about that?
I don't get too caught up in it. I mean, there's just, not that I don't think about it, but I get more grounded in, like, I feel like we're jumping ahead way too far before we even understand the opportunities ahead of us. And that's where I think, like, where I spend probably most of my time thinking about AI is just like, what are all the practical use cases of how companies, businesses, teams could use this now to, like, 10x their productivity or 10x something, and thinking of it as like this unlock. And it's a lot more shorter term focus, but I feel like that there's a lot of, and I'm not an expert to be able to think about where AGI will go, but in the short term, like, there's so much advancement that's happened in a matter of years, months, weeks, that I don't, like, it's developed so much faster than people are able to actually come up with tangible solutions. And I think that's where I'm trying to catch up. Like, I'm thinking about how can we take advantage of all these exciting new developments, and get creative with different use cases, different applications. So
and stay focused during a time when there's like so much noise.
absolutely,
Right? Because it might be an interesting conversation, this whole AGI thing, but so many wrong assumptions are baked into those discussions that
That's right.
almost feels like pointless, right? So what are you excited about today in your world, right?
Yeah, in my world, as I think about how a lot of AI coding and co-pilots and things are doing for like software engineering, where a lot of code bases are automatically written through a lot of these different AI tools. I'm challenging myself to think through how do we do that on the data side, and the challenge here is that unlike code, if you're generating code, there's like thousands and thousands of repositories that can generate a bunch of code. But to understand an analysis, there's a lot of business context. There's a lot of data context. And those two things are not always documented for an LLM to automatically have. And really what's in the back of everyone's mind, an analyst, a business person, has all of this context in their head. But we need to find a way of really being creative. How do we share that context in a structured way or sometimes unstructured way into an LLM so that you can create some of these analysis and thinking about analytics from an AI standpoint. And this is where I'm super excited about what the opportunities here. A lot of companies tout, I'm going to throw this AI layer on top of a BI tool. And it's great. It will give you summaries of that, but it's all superficial in my standpoint. I don't think anyone's really cracked this. How do I connect the dots between different tables and connect that to a presentation someone just did around why revenue went up and doing the diagnostics around that. And I'm starting to obsess on there has to be a way leveraging AI. Maybe it won't get 100% of the way there, but how do we think about that semantic layer? And how do we think about the insights layer? And the two of those combined are going to provide the appropriate context where you have the business equation, you have the revenue equation, you have where all the data lives so that it actually can inform not only the insight, but because I have my kids at home, I also have this notion of like, how do you show your work? So not only here's the insight coming from an LLM, but here's then all of the work that it's going to show you back so you can build that trust. And or, hey, it's done 80% of the analysis. Great. Let me pick it up from here. And it's giving me the entire workflow of the analysis of how to approach it. It already has the context of what tables I need to hit or how to approach the analysis. And then you can feed that back. And this is where, as we think about this iterative process of leveraging it, I think it get really exciting because then once it has that context and you need to do the analysis again, you can start to automate certain things. Then you'll be like, all right, great. We've done this analysis. Let's create an agent to make sure to automatically detect when some anomalies happen with that insight. And so it becomes these things where sometimes we do analysis. That's great. It's sitting on a shelf. Well, what happens when we need to refresh that? Someone needs to do that today manually, but there's 100 other priorities. So it gets super exciting to think about just the endless opportunities of how you can scale data, but scale business insights. And I don't think anyone's cracked this yet, but I'm excited to explore.
Yeah, and it's interesting that, again, we have an assumption about how AI will impact the world and impact business and all that, but just based on historical data, we're probably getting it wrong. Yeah. Like, it won't play out as we think, as most people. It's like because most people, even if you just look at the market of the evaluation of these AI companies, right? Obviously, the belief is in something that's kind of like, that's in the direction of the super intelligence, but the real opportunity is in actually helping these LLMs get closer to truth and with more accuracy.
That's right. Yeah.
It's actually that simple. So it's fascinating. I've been really enjoying the past, 3 years of working with you.
Yeah,
so I'm excited
likewise.
to see what you do in this role. And it was a lot of fun, sir. I really enjoyed the conversation.
Absolutely.
And I'm sure it wasn't the last one.
Oh yeah, I'm looking forward to many more. Thanks, Les.